Do
We're ready.
Genesis.
Genesis. Are we ready?
Genesis. Yes.
Good. Hey, everybody.
Supposed to be
7
supposed to be
o'clock.
live.
It's Thursday night.
7 p.m. Pacific
Thanks for joining us.
time. How are
Give
you?
everybody a moment to log on, but we are here in our Bible Discovery group.
Please log on.
If you would be so kind as to click like and make sure you share it if you're enjoying these studies. So, wow, we've made it all the way to Genesis 36.
36.
Ironically, 36. A lot of the commentators they kind of gloss
Marie's
over
first on. Hello.
it. Marie's
At least
on.
the
The
first one I
Sardina
saw.
household is on. Sardinas are.
So Pastor Paul did a whole bunch of tech stuff, and the Tuesday night study. I didn't see Wednesday night, but the Tuesday
Right.
evening study, the audio and video were all synced together again. So praise the Lord.
So-
We're praying that happens for us because he did a lot of work updating. So thank you, Pastor Paul,
Right. Yes, indeed.
producer Paul.
So yeah. So
But
hopefully
we're so
our
grateful for him.
voices and
Oh, that's a
our
good shot. Look,
lip
lets you see the word
motions will match.
Genesis.
There we go. So we are on, and we are getting ready to do 36. And as we were
Chapter 36.
starting to say, is surprisingly, a lot of commentators they just kind of gloss over this, and they don't really say much about it. But oh boy, when we were doing our research, we got a lot to say.
There's some
Okay.
controversy.
Yeah, there's a lot to say, and this ought to be a really cool study. Oh, Miss Angie's on
Hi,
board.
Angie.
Hi, Angie. So thanks for joining us. So
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Told me she
a
clicked
lot of
like.
people,
Thank you.
a lot of people get kind of freaked out by the names, and we are guaranteed we're going to butcher some of them. But
Maybe.
there is a
Maybe you are.
ton, an absolute ton of information in there. Stumbled across some rabbinical studies and writings.
I forgot to click like and share.
So they're from Jewish scholars,
Like
and
share.
boy, oh boy, did they just offer a wealth of insight and information on the different names and one commentator, one Jewish commentator said two things we must understand about Genesis is
Oh,
that
Joji. Hi, Joji.
is that it's
Polly.
real history. So
I'm the greeter. Hello.
Oh, hi, Miss Joji and Miss Polly.
And Miss
Thank
Polly.
you, thank you for joining us.
Temecula babysitting. So she's gonna check in later, Polly.
All right.
Thank you.
So where were we? Oh, so yeah, so a lot of the Jewish rabbis they added some really valuable insight, and there's like, from their perspective, Genesis is absolutely factual, historical history, which is indeed what Gay and I have been saying all along. You have to interpret it thus if you want to have a proper understanding of not only the Bible but things that are happening today. But the other thing is that they said that as God's word, it's multi-layered, and that there are allegorical lessons that we can derive from it. But we do the same thing all the time. Literally, every pastor that I know of, if they teach on a topical subject, or if they approach the Bible topically, they will use or they will draw upon an allegory from history or from life.
Yeah,
And
it could be from their
apply
own
it to the-
experience, like
Yeah.
you tell people. Yeah, you
Yeah,
tell
in
your
fact,
own
last
story.
Sunday we just did that. I used a historical event from 1942, and I applied it to our understanding of the Bible. So
Mhm.
Genesis is indeed history, and it is indeed has allegory in it. So, but it is not fictionalized. A lot of the secular scholars of the day want us to believe, or trying to force us to believe, actually, that oh no, this didn't really happen. It's just this wonderful allegorical story to help us live life better. Well, it is indeed an allegorical story to help us live life better, but we must understand that it is also historical fact, and it's history, and again, that's why the Bible is such a unique book, unlike anything else that exists. Hi, Miss Lori. Thanks for joining us. So, as soon as Gay finishes typing in her comments here, we are going to. Oh, she's going to give us some information on maps and charts and things like that that you can use that
I
are
found
really helpful.
I found a site like just at the last minute today, so I was just gonna type it in here. It's okay, www dot conforming. Did I spell it right? Yeah, conforming to Jesus.com.
There you go.
So I found them at the last minute. I didn't scan the whole site, so I don't know if they go off on some weird tangent, and I
Right.
don't agree with their teaching.
Right.
But their charts are very cool and
Right.
easy to click on and expand and print off or download. So
Yeah,
anyway,
there's so many names, and there's so many. We're talking about 12 siblings here that are responsible for the tribes of Israel. It's really, really helpful to, when you sit down to read the Bible on your own or study the Bible on your own. Just pull out one of these charts.
Lori Hoyt
Lori's-
just logged on. Hey,
yeah,
Lori.
so yeah.
She just said that she didn't know about Les Jr. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, some of our Southern people from across the country, one of
Yeah.
our very, very dear friends and fellow pastors, Les Moali, passed away unexpectedly earlier this week. So many, many people are just now finding out, and our sincere condolences to his wife Connie and his very, very large, very loving Samoan family who just welcomed everybody with open
Yes.
arms.
yeah. So yeah,
So,
please keep
yeah.
them all in your prayers.
Yeah,
For sure. Les Moale. He was actually kind of a pioneering Christian hip hop band called Priesthood. So if you notice, some of those videos are being posted from their Priesthood albums that they made, and he literally did travel around the country and around the globe
yeah.
with that band and with his music. Praising Jesus everywhere they went. Using hip hop. Using rap and hip hop. So. It's pretty cool. I think, wow, so he used his daily life and his ministry to praise and worship Jesus, and now he gets to do it in person with Jesus.
Absolutely. Street smart and Bible smart, amazingly Bible smart, and just an outstanding
Yeah.
man.
hmm
So, yes, so we mourn his passing, but we celebrate because he is
Right.
bringing some hip hop to
We
heaven.
know that Jesus is like he's doing a concert live now, instead of between here and there. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So go ahead and make your slide full screen.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then I'm gonna go ahead and expand over to the
Here we
double
go.
screen. There we go.
Here we go.
There
So-
we go. And you can see our new colors in our set. That's again, thank you to Pastor Paul, producer Paul, for
Right.
taking care of us and putting all that together. So we only had a little bit to do tonight. So thank you, Lord, thank you, Paul.
All right. So let's go in and let's
Genesis
see how badly
36.
we butcher these names, but but we're gonna bring in a lot of information to try and help you understand those names a little bit better. Here we go.
36:1. Now these are the records of the generations of Esau, that is Edom.
So it's very important to understand that the Bible breaks down genealogies. They're called. We've talked about this before. They're called Toledah, and so we've been following the Toledah of Jacob for several chapters. Now the editors of the Bible, if you will, Moses,
Moses. Right?
what he does is he inserts the genealogy of Esau in between, just before he starts picking up the narrative regarding Joseph, which would be one of Jacob's sons. Why?
Right.
Why would he do this? Well, because this lineage from Esau is part of the Jewish history. It's part of their lineage, and sadly, Esau's line or genealogy, generations, if you will, Esau's generations decidedly veered from God's way, and their predecessor successors are responsible for much of the problems that the nation of Israel will experience in future centuries. So, in latter accounts in the Bible, we actually see that some of these this very descendants that we're going to be talking about tonight, some of these descendants warred with the Israelites and actually conflicted with them and would not allow them to pass through their territories. So it's everyone. It's very important to know why Esau is stuck in there, and there's a good reason for it because it helps explain subsequent chapters in the Bible. Thank you for joining us, Miss Robin.
Hey, Robin.
Wow, you had to go back home and get your phone so you could log on. Well, thank you.
Thanks for doing
Thanks for
that.
making that effort. So here we go. Remember that Esau was also called Edom, which means red, hairy, red dude, if you want. Okay.
Right. Yeah. The one
Right.
commentator I was listening to was reminding us that, remember when he was born, when Jacob and Esau were born, right? Esau is the eldest. He was born first. But he came out, his skin tone was more of a reddish color.
Right.
So that's part of the idea that it's red. He's referred to as like red, I guess big red. He was the
Right.
bigger brother, big red maybe.
Right.
But also when he sold his birthright to Jacob, it
Right.
was for, they say, red lentil stew.
Right.
So then the idea of calling him Edom also was sort of a reminder that he kind of sold out for something red.
Right. He didn't even call it lentil stew. He just said, "Give me some of that red stuff."
Right.
You know.
Right, but
so,
it was
yeah.
a red
But-
lentil
but,
stew,
yeah.
so that's why that
Yeah.
idea that he's kind of saddled with that nickname Red,
Right.
or his name means red, you know.
Right. And it can also mean of the earth because, as we will see, Esau and his generations, his lineage, they are materialistic, I guess we could say, materialistic and of the earth, if you want to put it that way.
Mhm.
So let's jump in. Verse 2.
Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan, Edah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Oliobama, the daughter of Anah, the granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and also Basemath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Nebaioth.
Now, if you recall, when God was instructing Esau and Jacob's father Isaac, he was warning them against marrying from the local tribes around them, because not because of racial issues, but because of religious issues.
Right.
God knew that these people were pagans, if you will, and they would bring in their ungodly religiosity into the family, and it would distort that. So, but in defiance of his father's wishes and instruction, Esau went out and he took not just one wife, but he took several wives. Adah, a Hittite, Oholiabama, the daughter of Anah, a Hivite, and Basemath was Ishmael, would be a niece or a cousin, I guess. I can't quite recall what the
It's Ishmael's daughter.
right.
So it's
Like-
it's his half cousin. That's what I was
Half
telling
cou-
you
yeah.
about. So Esau and Ishmael's daughter would have been only like they would have been first cousins, but
Right.
they have different mothers.
Right.
So they would
be.
be they're half cousins. I
Right.
guess you would call that because they have the same. There was the same father up there, but there was Abraham. Ishmael is from Abraham and Hagar,
Right.
and Isaac is from Abraham and Rebecca. So.
And I believe he also married Judith. Yeah. I think there was another.
Esau?
Yeah, I think it was Esau. Anyway,
Mm,
I'll have to go back and look because now I'm getting
I have
confused
it
with all
right
these
here.
names.
No,
No.
they don't mention another wife. They
Yeah.
mention these three.
Okay. So, nonetheless, the instructive point here is that Esau, from the get-go, marries outside of the boundaries with which God had instructed Isaac and Rebecca to follow. And
Right.
so we're seeing Esau being defiant of God's wishes right out of the gate. And this would become almost the curse, if you will, of the family line descended from Esau. And again and again and again and again, we will see this play out in the biblical narrative as we move through the rest of Genesis and even Exodus and Deuteronomy. A lot of the conflict in there is derived from these very actions.
Right. It's in Genesis 28 is where Isaac is blessing Jacob because they've decided that he needs to go away because Esau
Right.
has threatened to kill him, and they wanted him to find a wife not from the local area
Right.
because in that, like in 27, Esau had taken 2 wives of the local women, and that's why
Right.
Rebecca says to Isaac, you know, these local women are going to be the death of me.
Right.
That they are torturing me, basically, she says. So
Yes.
she goes, so I don't want, you know, we don't want Jacob to choose a wife like Esau has. So
Right.
we want to send him away. And then when Isaac blesses him, he says, you know, thou shalt not lie with a woman, you know, from this area, basically. And so that's in also in Genesis 28. So then Esau actually hears that, and then that's when he goes to Ishmael and asks for his daughter's hand,
Right.
because he's actually trying to maybe be more obedient. He's like, oh, it's not a good thing that I took these Canaanite wives, and
Yeah.
that's not, you know, Jacob specifically pronounced, or Isaac specifically blessed, you know, Jacob and told him not to marry a Canaanite. So I'm going to marry somebody that would be more pleasing. But then he goes to Ishmael's area and gets a woman gets one of his daughters, and it's like, well, that's just
Right.
not correct either, because that's still not, you know, from God's own people, from the promise, the people from the line of promise.
So we
So
see
he's
this.
still
We see
making
this
the wrong
defiance
choice.
right here. And in fact, one rabbi that I was looking at, he said, you could translate the opening verses of this chapter as, now these are the generations of the one who sought his own strength.
Right.
It had nothing to do with God, and sought things his own way, and it did not work out well for him. So interesting translation. So Esau took wives, and then it briefly summarizes some of the lineage from these wives.
Right. So in verse 4, it says, Edah, that's one of Esau's, the Hittite wife, she bore Eliphaz to Esau, and Basemath gave birth to Reuel. Basemath is the one that's from Ishmael. And then Olibamah gave birth to Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. So these are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. So these are actually grandchildren.
Right. And so they're born in Canaan. And this is significant to the Jewish people, because we will see pretty soon Esau is going to pick up and he's going to move his family or his entourage, his tribe, to another region in there, and that will eventually become the territory designated as the Edomite kingdom. And the Edomites caused no end of grief to the Israelites later on, centuries later, but nonetheless. So we see this distinction of these sons that are born in the land of Canaan versus those born in the land of Seir, which we'll get to here in just a minute.
Hey, Brian. Brian's on.
Brian!
Good to see you.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for joining us. Here we go, verse 6.
Then Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all his household, and his livestock, and all his cattle, and all his property which he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to another land away from his brother Jacob.
So Esau, and why? Why do we ask? Because originally, remember, Esau had said, why don't you come down and join me? But Jacob went off his own way, went north, and spent a decade or more up there. Shechem, yes, intentionally avoiding his brother, whom he had a contentious relationship with anyway. Okay, but now Esau decidedly moves on, and the reason given is told to us in verse 7.
For their possessions had become too great for them to live together, and the land where they resided could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau lived in the hill country of Seir, Esau in Edom.
Is Edom.
Is Edom, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
In Edom, is Edom. Yeah.
Right. So the reason
well,
being...
it does become called Edom too eventually, but...
right. It does become
eventually.
Called, and they become known as the Edomites.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, interesting though, Esau and his tribe, their possessions had become too great to live together. The land could not support the vast herds that Esau have and the vast herds that Jacob's tribe had.
Right.
So Esau moves to the hill country of Seir, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. And then it again is the narrative is again reminding us that Esau is also Edom. Okay, again referring to that red characteristic of
redness.
Him. The irony is that way back in Genesis chapter 27, when Esau realized that Jacob had duped their father out of the blessing, Esau was distraught, and he cried, have you no blessing for me? It proved to be unfounded because he was a descendant of Abraham. God blessed Esau, blessed him anyway, and blessed him in the only way he really cared about, materially. And that would follow him throughout his life. And indeed, God did do that. God blessed him with so much wealth, material wealth, that Esau realized, I got more stuff than there is space for me and my brother to live side by side. I'm moving out. I'm moving out. And then there's the quote in Genesis 27:38. Esau said to his father in anguish, do you only have one blessing, my father? Bless me as well, my father. And Esau raised his voice and wept. Okay, and then despite his grief at what had transpired, God did bless him. God did bless him.
Right. The other thing that this is like reminiscent of is when Abraham and Lot parted ways. You know,
right.
Abraham and Lot were traveling together, and they had both been being blessed by God. And when Lot was close to Abraham, he was also receiving some of that blessing and becoming successful and everything. But then there was a lot of tension between their herdsmen, you know, fighting kind of over the water supply and the pastures. And so Abraham gave Lot the choice of which way he wanted to go. You choose which direction, which part of this land that we can see in front of us you want. And Lot chose to go towards Sodom and towards that area. And then God told Abraham, showed him the promised land from their viewpoint, and said, I will give all of this to you and your descendants.
Right.
So, but it's a very similar idea that they were both being blessed by God, even though Abraham was the chosen one, or the promise that the seed where the Savior would come through. Jacob was the chosen, line, but Esau was God did say, I will bless you in a different way, but I will bless you. And so,
and indeed,
and it does
God
come
did
to pass. Yeah, exactly. And that's part of one of the titles for this, chapter would be, God is always faithful to his promises, even if and when we mess up our end of the deal, like Jacob has done many times, right? Being the deceiver, being the manipulator, being the, trying to help God, he and his mother were trying to help God, make sure that he got the blessing. I mean, God was going to, and did orchestrate that, would have orchestrated that in a different way, than them deceiving Isaac, so God doesn't need our help for his plans to come to fruition. But if we mess it up, he'll still work through it.
Now, the priceless lesson that we, especially we as Americans, must take to heart is that Esau really only cared about material blessing. And God was faithful, and God did bless him abundantly, materially.
Mm-hmm.
And I know many of us struggle, but speaking from a cosmopolitan perspective, as an American, we are beyond wealthy for about 80% of the world. We are far wealthier than
Right.
about 80% of the world. So God has blessed us as American citizens materially. But our goal is not to be blessed material. Our goal is to be more like Jacob and to be
Right.
blessed spiritually.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, Esau is going to die. He's going to die, and they there isn't a hole big enough to take it all with him, and it wouldn't matter anyway. So Esau is a poignant and valuable lesson for us when we think that material blessings, they're nice. Make no mistake about
Right.
it. I enjoy my material possessions. I'm grateful for them. I am truly grateful for them. But if that was it, we're in bad shape.
Right.
We're in bad shape. So the take home from this is that Esau was blessed materially, but he was lacking spiritually, and we see this continue on throughout his family line with really bad consequences. In fact, some of the great wealth and material things that his family enjoyed came to naught, and some of those areas where Edom traditionally dwelt are nothing but barren, uninhabited land to this very day. So all of that stuff did not matter. It's just gone. It's just gone. So, all right, moving along, because we have a lot of ground to cover.
Well, there is one thing. If you, I don't know if you covered it or not, but or you're going to cover it, but there is some discrepancy regarding the names
Oh,
of
I did
Esau's
not cover it,
wives.
but yes.
So if you want to go back to the verse
Sure.
where they're listed, where the wives are listed. So Esau's wives. So at this point, his wives' names are mentioned earlier in Genesis chapter 26
Right.
and 28. And at that time, it's Judith, the daughter of Beeri, and Besmeth, the daughter of Elon, and Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael. In Genesis 26,
Right,
verse
right.
34, and then Genesis 28, verse 9 is where he marries Ishmael's daughter. And then here in Genesis 36, verse 2, it's Oliabama, and daughter of Anah, and Adah, the daughter of Elon. So, and then Basemath, daughter of Ishmael. So the thought that I read about this is that these Canaanite women and Ishmael's daughter, they had names that basically they were born with. They're given names,
Right.
and those are the names listed the first time they're mentioned in Genesis 26 and 28. And then here in Genesis 36, since they've been married now, they've been married to this guy for 40 years, so it's been a while, it's been a minute. So now when it's being recorded, Jacob is thought to be the author of this section, and then Moses has added commentary.
Right.
So the original person writing it down is like, okay, now they go by the name that they were given once they got married.
Right.
So they were given like a new name when they were married,
Right.
and when they married Esau. So that's why it's not a contradiction of the Bible or an inaccuracy of the Bible.
No.
It's just like, like my sister-in-law, Sue. We all call her Sue, and she was called Sue, I think, most of her life, but her given name was Susan.
Right.
So, she was Susan Heilman, and then she married my brother, and we call her Sue Wallenhaupt.
Right.
Well, Sue Wallenhaupt, we know, is Susan Heilman. They're the same
Right.
person. And so that's kind of a good analogy. It's very common even today. Like, you go by a different name once you get married. It might
Well-
be even your first name might change a little, or a middle name or something,
I had many friends in high school that were first generation from Hong Kong, and they would when they came to the United States, of course they had their Chinese name, but sometimes they would transliterate their name. Like I had a friend, his birth name was Wai Lim. Well, that easily became William, and so we knew him
Right.
as Bill. Okay. Other names, people would just, their names were difficult to pronounce, or so they would just change it to Chuck or
Jim,
John.
or
I had
Jim
a
or
John.
something.
Yeah. So had many friends who we knew by name. We just met a man, and his birth name, his honest to goodness birth name is William Shakespeare. Okay. So when we were talking to him, we said, well, he mentioned something about his name, and he goes, just call me Doug.
Yeah.
I'm like, Doug, and he goes like,
Doug.
yeah,
Where's that come from?
it just avoids the obvious, jokes
Issues.
and all the issues that come with my given name. Call me Doug.
Right.
So like, sure, we'll call you Doug. Okay, but his given name is William Shakespeare.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
same thing. There's no contradiction.
Right.
These are just,
It's like
yeah.
Sarah Tatupu. I mean, we knew her at Light and Life as
Oh,
Sarah
yeah.
Tatupu, but her given name is Salamasina.
Salamasina.
Salamasina
Yeah.
Tuaveve, Tatupu.
Yeah.
So, and probably a couple other names in there that I don't know, but her given name was Salamasina, and then
Right.
when she went to grade school, is what I remember her telling us one time, is that she was given by the teachers, like, that name's too hard to say, so we're calling you Sarah. And so from then on, her English name, which was just given to her by a random teacher at school
Right.
that didn't want to say Salamasina, changed it to Sarah. So anyway, so there's lots of examples, but I just wanted to cover that little apparent contradiction or discrepancy
Right.
more. That's not really a discrepancy. So
And the
there you go.
reason we dwell on it and we bring it up is because so many times people who are antagonistic to the Bible will say, "Well, look at this. It's this hodgepodge of things." Well, it's
These
easily
names don't even match.
it's easily explainable. It's not allegory in the sense of made up. It's real history with real explanations. We
Mhm.
just want to reiterate that.
Mhm.
So, verse 9.
Verse 9. These then are the records of the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites, in the hill country of Seir.
And do you want to blow that map? We're going to go ahead and enlarge that map there a little bit, so make it a little bit easier to see. And let
then
me
your
see.
arrow does show up
And
over there. if
my
you look up
arrow
the live.
shows up.
Yeah.
So Mount Seir is an actual mountain, but like many mountains in the around the world, it is also descriptive of a region and a chain of mountains. So like often we say, like when my family had a house up in Big Bear, we say, "Oh, we're going up to Big Bear," and there's indeed a city, but there's also the Big Bear region.
Right.
And
Well, and it's confusing because there's the city of Big Bear Lake,
right,
and then there's Big Bear City.
right.
There's literally two different towns, two different town councils, and all two different little local governments. And when they were first looking at houses up there, I kept getting confused. So
Yeah.
are you looking in the city of Big Bear or the city of Big Bear Lake?
So if you
Anyway.
can see my little icon moving there,
Very confusing.
very poorly,
Yeah.
but you can see my icon moving, and it's moving
The arrow.
on the range here that extends, and this is a very, very remote area, very, very wild, very difficult to access, but nonetheless,
Sort of like,
this is the region.
sort of like high desert. The way
Yeah.
they described it to me sounds like that high desert
Right.
region, like lots of scrub brush and stuff,
Right.
maybe, but not.
Here's an additional map, and if you can see down there, the bottom area is what would become the kingdom of Edom, and then you'll see that there the kingdom of Moab, named after Moab, but the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Philistines on your far left,
Right.
all surrounding the nation of what would become the nation of Israel. But the kingdom of Edom would be, again, as we've mentioned a couple of times, an unending source of grief and conflict to the nation of Israel, especially the southern kingdom, or what's known as the kingdom of Judah, for a portion of it. So
So where's Mount Seir on that?
it would be a kind of in
This kingdom And the kingdom of
kind
Edom.
of like running through here. Yeah, because it kind of connects the Dead Sea
Oh.
to further south. Okay.
Okay,
So,
because that other map was confusing to
yeah.
me.
So we're looking at kind of the top portion of it, and it would continue on down south. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Let me go back to us.
Yeah, we can go back to us. Edom
Here we are.
and the Edomites are mentioned about 130 times in the Bible, usually unfavorably. They were a frequent source of conflict and trouble for the Israelites. In fact, several of the prophets speak out against them and deliver very, very harsh prophecies against them. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and a good portion of Obadiah all speak out against them because of their attitude and because of their belligerence and because of their pride and because of their outright hostility, belligerence, hostility, same thing, hostility to God's protected people. But even in all that, God lays down an edict to the people of Israel and says, "You shall not abhor the Edomite, for he is your brother," pointing directly back to this chapters that we are reading. They're descended from Esau. They are literally blood relatives to the Israelite nation.
Mm-hmm.
So important point to understand.
I was just going to say, I just found it. The Moabites and the Ammonites are actually from Lot when his daughters tricked him into sleeping with them.
Right.
So that's where those two come from, those countries that were above Edom on that map that you just showed.
Right.
And that map is also on that site that I mentioned, the conformingtojesus.com.
So the nation or the kingdom of Edom would roughly conform to the modern country of Jordan. Okay, and if you're familiar with Middle Eastern geography at all, one of the major features of the country of Jordan is the city of Petra. Petra is considered one of the seven modern or seven archaeological wonders of the world. It's renowned for a couple of things. It's renowned for being nearly impregnable, only being able to access it through a very, very narrow passageway that could be easily defended. The passageway it has a name which escapes me right now, but it's about 3/4 of a mile long, and it's said that a half a dozen men could easily defend against a very large army in that passageway. And then, of course, it's a sandstone region, so the inhabitants of Petra carved elaborate sculptures and architecture right into the walls of the cliffs, and it was a thriving trade community, renowned throughout the Middle East, and again revered today as a
made this one bigger.
I should have made that one bigger, but Petra is kind of on the edge there, so
of Jordan.
But just to kind of give us an idea of where the Edomites ended up. Also, the Edomites are responsible for one of the better known characters in the New Testament, Herod the Great.
Mm-hmm.
Herod the Great was an Idumean, which is a descendant of the Edomites. There was some
Edomean.
Well,
that's the way I heard it pronounced by one guy. I just remembered that. Edomean. He said Herod the Great was an Edomean, which is a descendant of the Edomites.
Yeah. Joji, Petra was called Petra. It has another name in Arabic, but
it means rock.
But it means rock.
Also was so the name of Peter, the Apostle Peter, comes from the idea. That's why Peter is the rock. Petra.
So Herod the Great is remembered, if you will, for slaughter of the innocents, and when he realized that he had been tricked by the Magi, he just simply slaughtered all the 2-year-old males in the Bethlehem area as an act of vengeance and just pure evil. Okay.
Brian and Robin are saying they notice we're still in sync. Yes.
Yes, we
Praise
want
the
to be in
Lord.
sync. We're in
At the
sync.
very beginning, we talked about that.
Right.
Pastor Paul, producer Pastor Paul, did a lot of work revamping the files. So Wirecast stayed in sync. So praise the Lord, we're still
Yeah,
in
we've
sync.
been working so.
And
He has been working
he
so
works
hard on
super
doing it.
hard. So
So
you know,
we'll let him know.
come
We'll-
down here to Lighthouse Church at 5 o'clock one Sunday and say thank you to Pastor
Yeah,
Paul. He'd
we'll
love
see
that.
him later tonight, and we'll tell him that we'll say
I
that
know, it's so cool.
he was successful.
Yes.
He'll be delighted. But Herod the Great, not just renowned for his or infamous for his evil ways, was also one of the most prolific architects of that time frame, and is responsible for rebuilding the temple to a splendor that had not been rivaled, and would stay so until the Romans destroyed it in 70, I think 71 AD, in the 70 ADs. So anyway, so now that we have that established, moving along, because we are going to be reading a lot of names.
Verse 10. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, the son of Esau's wife Adah, and Ruel, the son of Esau's wife Basemath.
Okay.
Not a good idea to look at this section for naming your children or grandchildren. Just
Yeah,
saying.
probably not.
Probably not a good idea. Anyway, sons of Eliphaz then. So now these are the grandchildren. Sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz.
Good job.
Timnah was a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz, and then she bore Amalek to Eliphaz. These are the sons of Esau's wife Adah.
Okay. And a lot of names in there. Just want to call attention to one name that you will probably recognize as a tribal name, Amalek, who went on to become the father of the Amalekites. And we know that, again, the Amalekites were a thorn in the side of the Jewish nation. There's a lot of verbiage here. Real quickly, in Exodus, Amalekites came out and fought against Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, very famous account, "Choose men for us, go out and fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will station myself on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did just as Moses told him and fought against Amalek. And again, when it says Amalek,
It's the Amalekites.
it's Amalekites.
The
Fought against
Amalek
them.
people.
Yeah. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. It came about when Moses held his hand up that Israel prevailed, but when his hands went down, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, so they took a stone and put it on him, and he sat on it, or put it under him. He sat on it, and Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on each side and one on the other, so his hands were steady until the sun set. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. So very, very famous encounter. Again, but just descriptive of the contention that the Amalekites brought against the Jewish nation, or the Israelite nation.
Verse 13. Oh, one thing I was going to say, I really liked one of the commentators I used to prepare. I liked what he said. He said, when we come to these chapters that are just a lot of really difficult names, and we get to this chapter, and it is easy to just say, okay, that's just a lot of names, and sort of really skim over it. But he said, when we take time to go through it and concentrate on it and study it together, we are actually worshiping God.
Cool.
In a way that is even more powerful than any song we could sing or anything else we could do. It's a form of worship to spend time in the Word together, and spend time even on the passages that aren't as easy to read or maybe as seemingly meaningful at the first glance. It's worship to the Lord, because the other thing is, why? I always think, these names are really interesting, difficult to say, but interesting. But why? Why would God preserve them? And it just is a great testimony to the fact that God truly cares about every individual we are all created in his image, and no matter what your name is, God cares about you.
Amen.
He cared about these people enough to keep their names preserved throughout all this time. So we should, as we are, spend a little
Spend a
time
little
on
time
it
and don't just
and
gloss
attempt
over
it. It is what it is. So verse 11.
I just wanted to go back. We read
Yes.
this already,
Oh.
but I just wanted to go back real quickly and point out the name Eliphaz.
I like that one.
Amalek comes from Eliphaz, but it was pointed out by one of the Jewish rabbis that I was studying. Eliphaz means my God is gold. My God is gold. So we see this steady decline of these ancestors of Esau. We see this direction for the most part, not all, because we're going to read something here in a second, but for the most part, we see this steady departure from honoring God for who He is. So Eliphaz is the father of Amalek. God gold is my God, and he's the father of Amalek, who goes on to become a major barrier to the Israelites. Verse 13.
In verse 13 it says, and these are the sons of Ruel, Nahath, Zerah, Shema, and Mizah. These were the sons of Esau's wife, Basemath.
So, two quick points. Ruel, on the other hand, contrasted to as Eliphaz, Ruel means friend of God. Friend of God. And his mother's name actually means fragrance or fragrant one.
Basemath?
Yeah.
The Ishmael's daughter. That's Ishmael's daughter.
Yeah. So that's an interesting contrast. Moving along.
Verse 14, and these were the sons of Esau's wife, Oholibamah,
So we have one family, another family.
the daughter of Anah, the granddaughter of Zibeon. She bore to Esau Jeush, Jalam, and Korah.
So we have these different names, and Yalam means occultic. Okay, definitely departure from God's ways. And then we're going to see this word chiefs. It would be analogous to European dukes, if you will, over smaller portions of territory.
Which in the crown and young Victoria, they can just almost make anyone a duke. So anyway.
Almost, but they had responsibility.
There were some, we'll make him a duke. Okay.
Yeah.
These are the sons of the chiefs of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn of Esau, are Chief Teman, Chief Omar, Chief Zepho, and Chief Kenaz.
Which we just read about.
Chief Korah, Chief Gatam, and Chief Amalek. These are the chiefs descended from Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Adah.
So we see these power, these individuals establishing territories and dukedoms would be the term, or chiefdoms. So we see these parceling up of territory, and many commentators pointed out that we have these hierarchies being established at a time when Israel was without a king or without a political leader of this nature. Verse 17.
And these are the sons of Ruel, Esau's son, Chief Nahath, Chief Zerah, Chief Shema, Chief Mizah. These are the chiefs descended from Ruel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Esau's wife, Basemath.
So we have yet another reiteration of these sons, indicating that they went on to establish political positions in the land and establish their name in the hierarchy of Esau's clan. And then verse 18.
And these are the sons of Esau's wife, Oholibamah.
Oholibamah.
Oholibamah. There we go.
Oholibamah.
Oholibamah. They always do the emphasis at the end.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. Oholibamah. Chief Jeush, Chief Shalom, Chief Korah. These are the chiefs descended from Esau's wife, Oholibamah. the daughter of Anah. These are the sons of Esau, that is Edom, and these are their chiefs.
So we see a rapid growth in his family through these different women that he had taken as wives.
And one thing to mention under Edah and Eliphaz, he married a Timnah, the one the Amalekites came from, the Amalek came from. The Timnah is a concubine.
Right.
So she was a local
Right.
native girl. She wasn't, from Ishmael or from another. So one of the things that the commentator said was, so when Esau was moving into this area of Edom, because it wasn't called that, it was called Seir.
Which we will see
We're
in
going
a
to see in a
second.
second.
Yeah.
So this concubine, like he moved in and sort of started to invade and take over, not by military force, but by marriage. And this is an example of that, where Eliphaz had a concubine in addition to his wife Adah, the Hittite. He had a concubine in Timnah, and that's where the Amalekites came
Right.
from. So part of why, like, they had their own gods and idols and
Right.
governments, and it wasn't an uninhabited place. It was inhabited by people who were not followers of the one true living God, of course. So when he and his sons moved in there, then they assimilated into the population and
Right.
took wives and then formed alliances. But he does displace them and disown them.
Right. So we'll see
Eventually.
that. We'll see that in just a second,
We're
because
getting there.
watch what happens. We've been going down the lineage of Esau, and then we take sort of abrupt left turn here, and watch what happens in
Now
verse 20.
in verse 20, these are the sons of Seir. So these are the people who lived there, the region that Esau moved into. Seir the Horite, the inhabitants of the land, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishon. What does it say, Dishon again?
Dishane.
I can't say it.
Dishane and Dishon.
Oh, Dishon, I say in Dishane. These are the chiefs descended from the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom.
What? Where did they come from? Well, the Horites would have been the original inhabitants of that
Right.
region. And like Gage just said, the Edomites just kind of gradually intermingled with them and
Right.
basically booted them out by assimilation.
Right, and it mentioned like that name Zibeon and Anah,
Right.
like it was significant that the wives were descendants of that,
Right.
because they were chiefs in the area.
Right. So John Wesley, his commentary on this was that in the midst of the genealogy of the Edomites is inserted the genealogy of the Horites. That is, the Canaanites or Hittites. Those are names that we recognize. They were the natives, the local peoples of Mount Seir, that region. This comes in here not only to give light to the story or the genealogy, but to be a standing reflection upon the Edomites for intermarrying with them. Because again, Esau, had he cared, knew better. He
Right.
knew better.
Right.
Okay, the Edomites were intermarrying, by which it is likely they learned their way and corrupted themselves.
Mm-hmm.
All of this intermarrying was the effect of turning Esau's clan into an ungodly clan.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the reason for it being inserted in the genealogy
Right.
here.
Talking about compromise.
Right. Genesis 26 tells us that when Esau was 40 years old, he married, as Gay read earlier, Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basmath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. And verse 35 was so significant. And they brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah.
Right.
Verse 22.
And the sons of Lotan were Hori and Himam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah.
So we see the interconnection there. We see the how the lineages all tie in together. Verse 23.
And these are the sons of Shobal, Elvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam.
Very good. Very good. And again, if you took the time to look at all of the meanings of the name, we see a variety of names and a lot of them are just characteristic of distinguishing features or occupations that these individuals might have pursued, but there's nothing inherently godly about their names.
Right.
Verse 24.
And these are the sons of Zibeon, Aiah and Anah. And he is the Anah who found the hot springs in the wilderness when he was pasturing the donkeys of his father Zibeon.
Now, depending on what translation you have, it might not say hot springs. It might say mules, as in the animals, mules. And a lot of the Jewish translators actually lean more heavily towards the word being translated as mules. It's only found here. This is the only place it's found in the Bible. The idea of hot springs seems to make sense from the geography of the area, but the idea that Anah found mules or was able to make mules actually has some significance, because mules, if you may be familiar, mules are stronger than their donkey mother, not as strong as their parental or their patriarchal horse father.
So they're the offspring of a horse
and a donkey.
Makes a mule.
Yeah, donkeys are smaller, horses are larger, mules are kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very strong, incredibly strong, intelligent, can carry significantly heavier loads than a donkey, more sure-footed than horses. So amazing animals, but they're sterile. Mules can't have offspring.
Right.
And this is kind of a foreshadowing of what would happen to some of these tribes. They would be very strong, very powerful, very crafty, contribute greatly to the archaeology of the area, but then they would just die out and nobody would hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
So this is significant. This has some meaning that hot springs doesn't really have. So the majority of Hebrew scholars tend to lean towards mule,
Mm-hmm.
but hot springs is a lot easier to explain. Oh yeah, he found some hot springs in the desert. Yahoo. Okay.
Well, I know, but I don't know. Like hot springs wouldn't be beneficial for watering the animals.
Not really.
So hot springs are maybe have a medicinal value or
Right.
therapeutic value, but animals are not going to benefit from drinking hot water.
Right.
So I think the translation of mule, because Dr. Henry Morris's book, Genesis Record, he said that the Hebrew word for mule that's used here, yemim, Yemim, it's only used this one time in Scripture.
Right.
So mules are not referred to a lot in the Bible, and this
No.
word is the only time it's used. So, I mean, there's probably other words for springs. You know?
Yes.
So,
Oh, definitely.
And hot springs. So I'm not sure why they would just default to
Right.
saying hot springs. To me, it makes more sense that he found, some interesting, strong animals.
Right.
That would be beneficial. Now they're not gonna have offspring, but they'd be very useful in transporting goods and working in the fields. So
Yeah. So the idea of this individual establishing a lineage or a line of mules for trade purposes, for navigating the steep cliffs and think of Grand Canyon.
mhm.
Think of Grand Canyon. You can take horses down there, but the preferred transport animal is a donkey or a mule.
Mule.
Why? Because they're sure-footed. They can carry way more than a donkey.
Right.
If you've seen the donkeys that are characteristic of that region, they're rather short. They're only about chest high to us.
Yeah, about 4 foot.
Yeah,
nothing.
chest high or
Their
even
back is
smaller.
only that high
They carry tremendous loads and they're great animals.
for their size.
But a mule, comparably speaking, a mule is much larger and can carry a significantly larger payload. So, but again, the key point is that a mule is sterile.
Right.
And so, despite all of this creativity and all of this uh, um, uh, uh, intellect that goes into it, um, the if they're not maintained, they're going to die out, and we see that happening historically to these people.
Right.
It's 8 o'clock. We are out of time. We still have several verses to go, as is our
Who
custom.
knew we could make two times out?
We tried so hard to get through here, but there's so much meat in this passage.
Right.
That ironically, many commentators just say, "Oh yeah, there were a lot of people born during that time. They all belong to Esau's lineage. Let's move on to Joseph because he's way more interesting."
And it will be interesting, but
he will be interesting.
God doesn't want us to rush through anything. So,
no.
So we'll finish this chapter next time, I guess.
Right. We will stop here for tonight. Thank you one and all for joining us. We hope this was informative. A lot of names. I hope you enjoyed hearing us butcher the names.
I did not butcher anything.
That's just a little. That's just a little aside to make you laugh. But we had a ton of fun doing this. We are so grateful to each and every one of you for joining us. Have a great evening and week, and we will see you here next Thursday at 7 p.m. Southern California time.
Bye.
Good night. Blessings.
Bye. See you next time.